guys, and welcome back to episode number 13 of the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm your host today, and this is the Mobility Experiment. And today we're going to talk about behaviour change and forming habits. Before I jump into it, I'm going to talk a small bit on a new program that I just put out. And the program itself is called Foundational Mobility. Now, it was Holistic Mobility, but we've changed it to Foundational Mobility. And the reason is because of the exercises that are in it and the way the program is structured. I feel that it's a better representation of the outcome I'd like people to get out of it, because you're building a good foundation by working through the program. So it's made up of breathing routines, you have sleep habits, it talks about general movement, and then in that then you have a program. So it's 6 to 8 week program. You have 5 sessions a week, and they go through different breathing routines, different mobility exercises. Takes around about 20 to 25 minutes a day, and the goal is to get you moving better, to get you moving more, and it gives you the tools then to work on different aches and pains that you can, if you're, let's say, struggling with shoulder pain or back pain that comes on and off every once in a while, it gives you tools that you can use on those. And the reason I made it is because over quarantine and over the last year, people have been coming to me with similar issues, and I've talked about in previous podcasts, I talked about in the pain experience, what the cause of these are, what can be contributing to it, and a lot of the time it's a lack of movement in a certain area. So I found that I was kind of giving people a lot of the same exercises, so I said this way I can put them all in a program and they can work on it themselves. So I direct people that come to me now, I direct them to it, and I just said it's a great foundational one, and then if you're struggling with that, you can come back to me again. And a lot of nearly all of the time, it goes away, because this is it's not going to be treating all injuries, but it does treat different musculoskeletal issues that come up. Now, in today's podcast, I'm going to talk through a few different things, mostly related to behaviour change. So we're going to discuss the theory of planned behaviour in just a small amount of detail. We're going to talk about Pavlov and his dogs, and then we're going to go through different forms of behaviour change methods and what you can do or what you can implement to change a certain behaviour or to improve your habits. And then I'm going to talk at the end about what I do and different habits that I have built on over the last, let's say, year or 2 years, and things that are working for me, and see if you can take anything from that then. So to jump straight into it, I'm going to talk about Ivan Pavlov, and he was a physiologist from the early 1900s, and basically he came up with this classic conditioning. And classic conditioning is his research. What he did was he basically showed a dog meat, and then from that, then he noticed that they would salivate. Then he started to ring a bell in front of the dog, and then he noticed that there was no reaction at all. But over time, he started to show the dog meat and ring a bell at the exact same time. Now, from that, he noticed that the dog would start to salivate, obviously, because the meat was there and the bell was ringing in the background. But when he took away the meat and then he rang the bell by itself, he also noticed that the dog would start to salivate. So that's where he came up with that term of, it was a conditioned response, and it was a trained conditioned response. So he was able to train that into them. So, and obviously after a certain time of ringing the bell, let's say maybe the 50th time of ringing the bell and not showing the meat, then that response actually started to become extinct. So it started to disappear. So the reason I'm starting with that is because habits are similar to that. Once you get into them and once you condition yourself to do them, they become a reflex. You don't think about them as much, and that's why they're so good. And like a habit or a behavior, you are the sum of your habits and behaviors, you could say, because on a day-to-day, you're 40% of the behaviors that you do are habits. So throughout this podcast, I'm going to be talking about a few different researchers, but one of the main guys is James Clear, and I'll definitely just pop that in right away. Is if anyone is really interested in this, to go into a lot more detail, his book on atomic habits is excellent. He talks about how small changes make a big difference over time. When talking about behavior change and implementing different behavior change techniques and then trying to form different habits, there's a couple of different techniques that you can use. So one of the main ones that most people will be very familiar with is goal setting. Goal setting is obviously you pick a certain task that you want to have completed by a certain time, and you set that, and the more specific you are, the better. So when you talk about goal setting, it's best, or there's a few different forms, but one of the easiest forms to implement is a thing called SMART goals. And SMART goals are, when you break it down, it's an acronym. So it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then time bound. When you look at that a bit further, so a goal has to be specific, because if it's not specific, it's very hard to tell how far along you are in achieving that, or even if you did achieve it or if you didn't achieve it. So if it's a broad goal of I want to get fitter, then it's very hard to see. Well, you'll obviously notice that you're fitter, but how do you know how much fitter you're going to get? And then where along the journey do you stop and say that I'm fit enough at this stage? A different goal could be I want to run a 5k. If you were making it specific, I want to run 5 kilometers in under 30 minutes. That's a lot more specific. Now, to make that measurable, so I tied it in already, to make it measurable, it is the 30 minutes is going to be measurable, and then the 5k is also very measurable. And then to make it, is it attainable? It definitely is. Attainable is basically, would you be able to, is it possible for you to do it? Realistic is the same as that. Like, is it a realistic goal? Will you commit to it? Is it something that you'll be able to actually get to or achieve? And then time bound is you would make that goal within a certain period. So you'll say, I want to run a 5k in under 30 minutes in the next, let's say, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. So you can see your time bound is really going to affect if it's realistic or attainable as well. Because if you say I want to run a 5k in under 30 minutes by tomorrow, and you've never in your life run a 5k before, that would want to be a fair miracle to actually get that done. But it's possible, obviously, but it's going to be a miracle, and you're probably going to fail at that because it's not as realistic as it should be. So that's looking at SMART goals, and that's looking at goal setting itself. And then on top of that, then there's self-monitoring, and self-monitoring is just like taking note of it, journaling on it. You could, one example that they use in that Atomic Habits is actually using a paperclip. So you're changing paperclips from one jar into another. So every time you do it, every time you complete the behavior, complete the task, you put one to the other. So if you were self-monitoring your 5k, every time you run a 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, you put a paperclip from one into the other, and then you could see how they add up over time and how that will make a big difference then when it actually comes to the 8 weeks down the line and you have to run it. You'll see how many times you ran before that. So you'll see it every day. So it keeps you accountable to it. So that's the self-monitoring part, and self-monitoring can be one of the most important parts of setting any goal and behavior change, because if you're not keeping an eye on it, how do you know if you're getting better at it or if you're not getting better at it? And then how do you know if you are changing or if you're not? And then are you being honest with yourself? So if you're self-monitoring, you can be honest with yourself as well and saying, well, I didn't run 3 or 4 times this week. That's okay. I'm going to catch up at the weekend. But if you're not doing that, and obviously a run is very easy to remember if you did or not, but that's why when you get to the smaller goals, there are things that are harder to measure. It's more important. But you can see then yourself, are you being honest with yourself? Is this something that I did do? Or is it something that I just said I do and I never followed through with it, and then I didn't achieve my goal because of this? So monitoring is going to be really important in that as well. Now, after that, there's a few other things you can do as well. So self-talk is a big one, and self-talk is basically talk exactly as it says in the name. It's talking to yourself, and one paper looked at, or one researcher looked at those having people repeat their core values to themselves. Does that make them more likely to complete a behavior? And in this situation, the researchers were looking at that self-affirmation, so self-talk, and they were seeing if it was able to counteract a thing called ego depletion. Now, before I jump into that, I'm going to talk a small bit on a thing called self-regulation. Okay, so self-regulation is your ability to control your own thoughts, emotions, and actions. Now, your ability to self-regulate and your ability to control your own thoughts, emotions, and actions is determined by a thing called, or the length of time that you can do it, let's say, is determined by a thing called your cognitive reserve. Now, these researchers, Baumeister and Vowes, I hope I pronounced that right, they basically say that this cognitive reserve, it's a limited energy system and it's involved in self-regulation, obviously. But once it's depleted, the individual or the person will start to revert back to a previous habit or a passive option. And now that passive option may be, you could say, your conditioned reflex of what I talked about earlier on with Pavlov. Okay, so that's, if whatever's the easiest thing for your body to do, it will do it usually. And that's why habits are so effective. So if you can train that optimally, the easiest thing for your body to do might be, it will give you, you'll get positive benefit from it. But if you don't train that, then it's going to do the easiest thing, and that could be positive or negative. Okay. Now, the exhaustion of this resource. So when the resource completely runs out, that's what they call ego depletion. Okay. Now, as I said, now just before I jump back to the ego depletion, I'll talk a small bit about how they found out about it. So they brought in 2 groups of participants, and researchers brought them into a room and they set them down individually. Now, they set them down and they put cookies in front of one group, okay? And then they put cookies and radishes, I should say, in front of both groups. And what they said to one group is that you can eat as many cookies as you want. There's no problem. Eat whatever you want. You can eat radishes if you'd like as well, if that's what you're inclined to do. And then in front of the other group, they said you can't eat any cookies. You can eat as many radishes as you want. And they set them there midday. They told them not to eat lunch as well. So when they were sitting there, they were basically, the one group ate whatever they needed. They took whatever cookies they wanted, took whatever radishes they wanted. The other group had to sit down and just, their only option, even though the cookies were there, their only option was to eat the radishes. Now, after an interval of 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, they brought in an unsolvable puzzle. So a puzzle that basically doesn't make a difference how long you spend at it. There's no way you can solve it. And they gave it to the participants in each group. And they found that the people who were allowed to eat whatever they want had times, or were stayed at the puzzle for longer than the people who didn't, who weren't allowed to eat whatever they wanted. So they found then that cognitive reserve then resulted in a thing. If you let's say the willpower is the easiest way to describe what cognitive reserve is. After a certain amount of time, your willpower gets drained. Okay, so it gets drained on different tasks that you're not allowed to do. And in this situation, they weren't allowed to eat the cookies. So that drained it faster. And then when they were given the puzzle, they gave up on it way quicker. So basically, I've said I would talk about it in normal terms. Basically, you have a certain amount of willpower every day. And depending on what comes up in that day, so whether it be stress or if you're fatigued or if you're anxious, that's all going to drain your willpower. And if your willpower gets drained, it's a lot more difficult to self-regulate, and it's a lot more difficult to control your thoughts and your actions and your emotions. And that's why it's important to build habits, because if you build habits, they then become your conditioned reflex. So they are what you fall back on, and it doesn't take that much effort to complete these habits, okay? And that's why it's important to build them. So it could be anything from, it could be from a meditation habit, it could be a habit of getting out and walking every day or reading every day, anything like that. It's all really important, because you will fall back on it. And if your habit is to come in the evening and sit down and watch TV, that becomes very easy, very fast, and it's appealing as well. And we'll go into why that is important, why making it appealing is important in the next block. So moving on from there and moving on to talking about how to change your behavior, how to make habits easier, or how to build new habits, there's a few things. And as I mentioned at the start, this author, James Clear, he looks at them in his book, Atomic Habits, and I'll just mention a few of the headings. So one of the main ones he says is make it obvious. So you want to make the habit as obvious as possible, so you don't avoid it and you don't have to think about it. And when I'm talking about making habits, a lot of this, or all of these, are working off that cognitive reserve as well, and reducing the amount of ego depletion that happens throughout the day to make it easier. Okay, because a habit is an ingrained pattern, something that you fall back on, remember. But if it's taking you a lot of effort, then you're not going to fall back on it. Because the body, as I've said before in previous podcasts, the body is always looking to automate stuff and make it as easy as possible for itself, so it doesn't use as much energy. And that could be any type of energy, from calories or glucose or any type of energy at all. It wants to make it as easy as possible. So by making it obvious, and it touches on something that I said earlier on, I talked about different forms of behavior change, and I mentioned cueing as one of them, cueing or prompting. One of the things that you can do is make your cue as prominent as possible. Now, I'll actually talk about how I built a meditation habit, because it's going to be easier to give that example as I talk through it. So for me to make my cue as prominent as possible, what I did is I used to leave out at nighttime. I used to leave out my mat on the ground, so my yoga mat on the ground. So it'd be the first thing I saw when I got up in the morning, and then obviously when I see it in the morning, it's going to be, I have to step over it, so I'll know straight away if I'm avoiding it or not. Even if I go make an excuse, I can still see it, and I will have to roll up that mat anyway. I'm not going to leave it on the ground all day because I don't want to be walking on it and making it dirty. So if I'm not going to do it at all, I still have to roll up the mat. Now, looking at this part of it, I'm just going to talk about, I touched on it earlier, I touched upon implementation intentions. And an implementation intention is when you basically say a time, or you set a time in a day and you say it out loud to yourself. And research shows that if you do that you can make it, or you're more likely to complete the action or complete the behavior, because you've already said out loud when you're going to do it. Now, this technique actually ties back to what I said earlier on about the self-affirmation of core values and how that can improve your self-control. When you say it out loud and say it to yourself, first you're giving yourself a cue point in terms of you're telling yourself exactly when you're going to do it and exactly how you're going to do it and where you're going to do it. The more detail, the better. Now, when you do that to yourself, you're making note of it basically. So it's on your to-do list, but it's on your to-do list in the fact that you know exactly when you're doing it. So meditation, for me, an implementation intention that I used was, I said, when I get up in the morning, first thing I'm going to do is get down and do 20-minute meditation. So I knew it straight away. When I wake up in the morning, when I turn off my alarm, because I have to get up out of bed to turn off my alarm anyway, because I put it away from the bed, I'm going to go down and I'm going to meditate straight away. Now, that's a simple way of looking at that, but it's extremely effective, and it's crazy how effective it is. So even if you were looking at the gym, let's say on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, I'm going to go to the gym when I come home or after I come home from work, I'm going to go to the gym. That makes that habit so much easier to implement, because when it comes 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, you know what you're doing exactly. Or even on a Wednesday during the day, you know at 7 o'clock tonight, I'm going doing that. As opposed to saying, and it's easier, I suppose, to describe it when you look at the opposite of that, as opposed to saying, I'm going to go to the gym this week. So on Monday, when you get home and you're tired and you're saying, I won't go. Tuesday, same thing. There might be Champions League on or some match on. You say, I won't go now either tonight. Wednesday comes, you're feeling a bit hungry. You say, I have to make food. So you won't do that. And then you can see as the week goes on, then you're less likely to do it because you've already given up on it the 3 times before that. So when you state a time in a day, it's a lot easier to act upon that when it comes to that time. The next one then is make it as attractive as possible. And he talks about bundling unattractive tasks together with something enjoyable. And this is something that I do all the time. And it's something that I do. An example right now is if I am going to be, let's say, recording a podcast, what I've started to do is I get my podcast ready. I organize everything. Not that it's unattractive, not that I don't like doing it, but it is a lot of work to put a podcast together. So I get all my research done. I write it all down. I do all that and I plan it out. And today, after this, once I have this podcast done, my plan is to sauna. So I know I've made the deal with myself that once I've recorded this podcast, I'm going to sauna for 30 minutes. And that's my next step. So if anyone is wondering where I am after this. But yeah, so that's my next step anyway. So once I have it done, I'm going to go straight into the sauna. Very easy. With that now, I have the anticipation and reward. So the anticipation of, I know when I get this done, I can just pack up my stuff, close up my laptop, and straight away grab my swimming shorts or whatever and go up to the sauna. It's really easy to do. And that's the reward of doing it. Okay, so for this example, that's how that one works. Then the next one is make it easy as possible. Now, I know I'm jumping over and back here between different behaviors, but I'm just trying to give you different examples of how they do work. Okay, make it as easy as possible. So you're trying to reduce as much friction as you can. And the reason you're doing that, and that ties back exactly what I said about cognitive reserve, that ties back to that in terms of you're trying to use less of that, use less of your willpower to get something done. So then if it is difficult to do it, you'll be more likely to do it. So in this example, let's say make it as easy as possible. As I said, I put the mat on the ground, so I don't have to get up. I don't have to think about taking the mat out and rolling it out in the morning. It's there on the ground when I get up out of bed. So all I have to do is sit down on it straight away, grab a pillow and sit on it, and I can go through my meditation. Another one is for people, if you're struggling, and this one is so effective. If you struggle with social media and you're trying to study or you're trying to do work, just put it out of your reach. So put it in a different room, put it in a drawer, do something like that with it. That makes it so much easier, and it's something that I have implemented with all of my clients, that or anyone that was struggling with implementing behaviors, because it's so effective. Because of the fact that if you look at it the opposite way, it does take a bit of cognitive reserve to actually get up and go over and get your phone and look at social media and then put it back in and then come back over again. Because a lot of the time how you get caught on social media is you're going checking your phone for something small. Oh, I'm going to check it for this, and then straight away you're swiping through Instagram. So if it's away and out of the room, if it's not something that you need to do right now, it's very you're not going to get up and walk out, walk a couple of minutes over, get your phone and then grab it and check that and then come back again. You're less likely to do it, and at the end of that, then you're going to forget about it in a couple of seconds. And if it's very important, you can do it at the end. So you're looking to reduce friction, and as I said, reduce friction is to stop that depletion of cognitive reserve. And then the next one is make it satisfying. So reward yourself for something that you do after you do it. After you do the habit, if it's something that you don't enjoy as much, make it as satisfying as possible. So some people, they put money in a box after they do everything. So they'll say, if I go for a walk this evening, I will put €5 in a box, and I'm going to spend that €5 on, I don't know what would be a good example. Let's say a Domino's at the end of the month, or I'm going to get takeaway at the end of the month. So you're putting your money aside and you're doing this other activity, and then you're coming back to it. Now, there'll definitely be personal trainers like, that's the worst thing you could do, but it does, in a way, it's a good way of describing what I'm trying to talk about. Now, because we work off that immediate gratification in our society, in terms of, like, it's so easy to get stuff done. If I want to buy something, I can just go online and buy it straight away. I don't have to think about that. So if you tie that back, and that's the way we've been over the last couple of millions of years, or millions of years, I should say, or thousands of years, really, if I was breaking around 30,000 if I wanted, or 30,000 if I wanted to be specific. But that's the way we've worked, in terms of you are chasing an animal to kill it, to eat it. That's it. So that immediate gratification works so well, and the idea of postponing something to do it later on is not as appealing. So make it satisfying and reward yourself when you're doing it. And for me now, my reward of, let's say, the meditation is, once I do it, I kind of have a different structure in my mornings, and I'll talk you through it anyway, but I feel over the whole day, and I make sure to make a point of how I feel later in the day after I had meditated that morning. So I make sure to make a point around about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, about if I am focused on something or what my focus is like, because now I really notice the effects of if I meditate or if I don't. And then lastly, it's track your habits. And as I said earlier on, that self-monitoring is so important. Tracking it keeps you on task of what you have to do. So if you implement all those, you can make building new habits makes it so much easier, and it makes it easier to change your behavior. Now, just before I jump off, I'll talk a little bit about what I do and what routines I have to reduce friction and to help me get through my day and help me get more work done. So obviously at the start of every week, I make a weekly to-do list. I have certain goals that I want to achieve at the end of, let's say, 1 month, and at the end of 3 months, at the end of the year. I have different goals like that I want to achieve. But to get to those, I make a weekly to-do list of different things that I have to do. And at the end of the week, I tick them all off, or I X the ones I didn't do, and I put a reason beside it why I didn't do it. And I try to be as honest as possible when I'm doing that, because if I'm not honest, and I notice it myself sometimes, if I'm kind of tired and if I'm not in the mood for doing it, I'll give myself some bullshit reason. And then when I look at it the next day, I'll know it was a bullshit reason. So I'll cross it off and then I'll write a proper reason in. Okay, so ticking it off, what I did and what I didn't do is really important. And then my mornings are going to be fairly simple. I wake up, I meditate for 20 minutes. When I finish meditating, I roll up the mat, I put it in, I jump into bed, or not jump into bed, but I sit on the bed and I'll read for around about 15 to 20 minutes as well. And then once I do that, I hop off the bed and I make my bed. And the reason I make the bed is because it's the first task of the day is accomplished. Well, apart from the meditation and the reading, it works very well for me. And I took it off of Tim Ferriss. It's just a really good way, especially when you come back at night, you saw that the first thing you did that day was something that was important to you and that paid off in the future. Because when you come back at nighttime and you go into your room and your bed is made, it's very satisfying as opposed to having to make your bed before you go to bed. And at nighttime, then my bedtime routine is nearly always the same. Obviously you'll do the standard ones, like I'll brush and floss my teeth, and then to make me get into flossing, what I've done is I've left it right in front of me because I will feel bad now if I don't floss, because I'll walk right past it and I'll be like, oh shit, I should have done that. So I'll nearly always go back and get it and do it, because it's become a point now of I don't know, am I shaming myself into doing it or not, but it does work for me anyway. Then I'll go into the room, my bed is made or whatever, I'll set up my stuff for the next day. So anything I need to get done, I'll set out my clothes. If I'm working or whatever, I'll set out clothes that I need. And then I will also do a small bit of journaling if I need to. And then I will play guitar or practice guitar, because it's something that I've picked up and I'm trying to learn. I'll practice that for around about 10 minutes. I say 10 minutes, but it's nearly always over 10 minutes, because once you get into it, you do start playing it a bit more. And then I'll read for, as I say, 10 minutes. It's kind of my thing, but once I pick it up, I usually read for a bit more. And then I'll go straight to bed then after that. Well, I'll usually put sleep tape on my mouth and then I'll go to bed. And from doing that now, I do get a lot of satisfaction from actually completing those habits, because I know they're beneficial for me. And at the start, there was a lot of friction doing them. Now, the same thing is, I don't do that every single night. So there's no point saying I do if I'm late, if I'm caught out late, if I'm working later, if I'm even if I'm going out at the weekend. Obviously, I'm not going to do it as much. But that's my structure for my week generally. Now, outside of that, then, as I was saying, I get a good bit of satisfaction for it. There is a lot of discipline involved in it, and there's no point saying that you don't need discipline to do it. And discipline is basically the difference of what you need between what you need now, or what you want to do now, and what you are trying to achieve in the future, what you need in the future. And it's a trade-off. So there's no point saying that it's just easy and it falls into place. It does take a bit of discipline to get into that. So guys, that's everything that I wanted to talk about today. I covered everything there that I wanted to touch on. I wanted to go through all the different points and then how to build habits, and I wanted to talk a small bit about my own habits and how I work on those, or how I implement those, and why, or what way I make them frictionless as possible, to give you a better insight of how you may make yours easier. Okay, so if anyone has any questions on that, guys, make sure to get onto me on Instagram or even on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is at Robbie Cassidy. Get onto me on either of those, or you can send me an email at the mobility tutor, or I should say, it's mobilitytutor@gmail.com. Before I sign off, I want to talk really quickly, as I was saying, about that foundational mobility program. You can see it on my website. It goes into a lot more detail than I'll talk about here, but it's the baseline, or it's a foundation for building a good mobility routine in the morning, breathing habits, and it also talks through sleep, and it talks through general movement, and it actually talks through hydration as well. When I talk about it, I didn't mention that at the start. So it gives you baseline wellness stuff, and it also gives you those 5 days of mobility and movement routines as well. So it's excellent for building that foundation, freeing up your body, helping you reduce that back pain or shoulder pain or stuff that's nagging at you for a long time. It gives you the tools to get rid of that. And in the long term, then it's going to give you the tools to build your routine for longevity. So you won't be suffering with that for years and years on end and paying physio bills over and over again and getting the same exercises. So it's a one-time, just go on my website, you can download it from there, and it's very easy to implement. All the exercises have videos, and everything has a video connected to it. But that's everything from me today, guys. Thanks a million for signing in, and I hope to see you all next week. Have a good one.